From my perspective, I see it as kind of like, even though he's prime minister and even though he could do everything he wanted to technically, I mean, until he got no confidence out, uh, there's not really that's not a good political strategy, because you want it to be people said they wanted you to do what you're doing, right? You want the mandate of the people, whether
Unless
it be the type of mandate that yeah, exactly, right, which is this is yeah, but this is kind of what I'm saying, right, is I think that I see a different style of leadership. Like, even when you were talking there for a second, I almost thought you were talking about Carney when you said you're going to see a different approach to government, because I think that as much as, I think that some of the ways that they market Carney as an outsider, it comes off a little silly, but in a lot of ways he is, right. He doesn't have the typical politician approach to a lot of these issues. Even, I would say, the statement he gave recently, where he kind of said that the American and Canadian relationship is not the same anymore, and that's done.
Like, years, we must fundamentally reimagine our economy. We must ensure that Canada can succeed in a drastically different world. The old relationship we had with the United States, based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperation, is over.
Carney, I think the big difference for me is that he seems a lot more focused on the economy. He seems a lot more invested in increasing productivity, in expanding our resource markets, expanding infrastructure to extract those resources, things like the subway in Ontario, Quebec, or wherever they built that, stuff like that is huge for productivity, right? It expands job markets for people. People can get to work easier. It reduces traffic on the road. And consequently, it'll decrease delivery times for goods to stores and to restaurants and stuff.
Like the focus, Carney's focus just being on the economy. I think that's exactly where Pierre's focus has been this entire time. He was calling on, he was predicting a lot of the economic issues we're facing before they even really happened, and he was just saying, because we're doing this is going to lead to this. Because, people can argue he hasn't had much real world experience, but he's a hard worker and he's pretty disciplined. And he seems to have been studying a lot throughout his career as well, knowing it was relevant to his current path. And I think that's a huge strength under his belt. So he's not your average career politician, right? And I think that's the biggest difference between Poilievre and this person that Carney describes, that I think is more common in the UK. And I think that you see, and it is common in Canada, don't get me wrong, but like, I think you're not going to see as much of that in this current Conservative Party, just because of what the Conservative Party's been through in the last decade since Harper's departure, and since Trudeau came into power. That party has also been under quite a transformation over time, and I don't think that they were really ready to actually lead the country reform government until Poilievre was elected leader. Up to that point, they seem to have a lot of issues, and like what I was going to say earlier is Poilievre managed to almost triple the membership of the Conservative Party from 250,000 to 675,000, which is insane. And that is just since he's become party leader. That's how many members are in the Conservative Party now in Canada. So I think that's something to also take into consideration, is he's managed to take this party that was not doing very well and was not even really it was the second main contender, but people didn't know how long the Liberals were going to maintain power for. Honestly, I didn't think Trudeau was going to have anyone who was willing to really challenge him. And I didn't really know, when I first saw Poilievre, was him, the infamous remote 2020 House of Commons video, 2021 House of Commons videos before he was party leader, when he was just grilling Trudeau in committee meetings, right, as an MP. And I think that was just showing kind of his character and who he is. He is an attack dog, don't get me wrong, but I don't think he's a meathead. And I think that's where people kind of I think he's a pretty smart dude who's got a pretty good understanding of what we need. Does he have the salt to be able to actually take his team and enact all that? That's another question, right? And I think that is something we're going to see. And who knows, we could end up with a Conservative minority government, right? And then we could have another NDP Liberal coalition that could just obstruct everything the Conservatives were trying to do. I hope that never happens again. However, I would hope that if we do have a Conservative minority government, that if Mark Carney is as wise as everybody says he is, he will work with the Conservatives. And he would at least allow them to do the things that he had on a similar platform and not just, prevent it out of spite. And I think that time will tell when we see that happen. But I think when it comes down to it, because he hasn't been exposed, people don't really know who Mark Carney is yet. I think it's working to his advantage right now, but as time goes on, that advantage is going to lose its edge. And I think right now we're seeing is like these polls are representations of the popular, of essentially a popular vote, right? A federal voting intention poll, essentially, from what I understand, ends up coming out across as just a popular vote. And I think that's essentially what we're seeing, where Carney is coming on top, also because of where he's popular right now, right? And I think he's also been able to kind of win over some of Western Canada, which I think is a huge influence on those projected numbers, right? And I think that traditionally Western Canada, and many other analysts have said, that Western Canada is traditionally a conservative stronghold. The BC having its provincial NDP party is a different story, but almost every riding, aside from a few, end up being blue when it comes to a federal election in BC traditionally. But that's not quite what we're seeing right now, is I think that he's managed to win over a lot of the NDP voters that feel a little homeless right now because of Jagmeet Singh's poor leadership. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that, there's plenty more where that came from. You can find the link to the full episode in the description below. Click now, watch, and get grounded with all of us. Thanks for watching.